There are places in West Virginia where people will tell you never to answer a voice coming from the woods. Nancy Musk used to think that was just an old mountain superstition. Then she heard her dead mother call her name from behind the house, and Nancy answered, "Welcome back." Tonight's story takes us deep into the mountains of West Virginia, to the kind of place where the roads narrow without warning, cell service disappears, and houses sit so far apart that nobody hears you scream unless the sound carries through the trees. So dim the lights. Turn the volume up, and before we begin, remember this. If you ever hear someone you love calling your name from the woods, make sure they are standing in front of you before you answer, because Nancy Musk learned that lesson too late. What happened to Nancy began after her mother died, but the truth is, the story had started 22 years earlier. It began with her younger sister, Lily. It began with a storm, and it began with a locked cellar door that Nancy's mother never allowed anyone to open. Even now, Nancy cannot explain everything that happened inside that farmhouse. There are pieces of that night she still does not remember. There are voices she heard that belonged to people who were already dead. There are things she saw moving between the trees that did not look fully human. And then there was the phone call. At 2:13 in the morning, Nancy's cell phone rang. The caller ID showed her own name. When she answered, a little girl whispered, "Don't let Mom open the cellar." Then something beneath the house knocked 3 times. Nancy Musk was 34 years old when she returned to Black Hollow, West Virginia. By then, she had spent most of her adult life outside Columbus, Ohio. She worked in billing at a dental office, lived above a 24-hour laundromat, and kept her days as predictable as possible. She liked routines, coffee at the same time every morning, the same route to work, the same grocery store on Friday evenings. She slept with the television on because silence made her uncomfortable, although she never told anyone why. Most people in Nancy's life knew she came from West Virginia. Almost nobody knew she had a sister. Lily Musk disappeared in 2003 during a thunderstorm that flooded the lower roads and knocked out power across most of the county. She was 8 years old. Nancy was 12. Search volunteers came from 3 counties. They brought bloodhounds, 4-wheelers, portable spotlights, and thermal cameras. For 11 days, people searched the hills, creek beds, and abandoned mine entrances around Black Hollow. They found one of Lily's pink sneakers beside Blackwater Creek. They never found Lily. Nancy told the police she had slept through the entire night. Her mother, Evelyn, told them the same thing. For years, Nancy believed that version of events because the alternative was too frightening to consider. After Lily vanished, Evelyn sealed her bedroom. She nailed the windows shut. She hid the brass key. She also began locking the cellar every night before sunset. Nancy remembered asking once why the cellar had to remain closed. Her mother had stared at her for so long that Nancy immediately regretted the question. Then Evelyn said, "Because some doors remember who opened them." Nancy left Black Hollow as soon as she was old enough. At first, she called home once a week, then once a month, then only around Christmas. By the time she reached her 30s, most conversations with Evelyn lasted less than 5 minutes. Her mother always sounded distracted, as though someone else was standing nearby. Sometimes, Nancy heard quiet breathing on the line. Once, she heard a little girl laughing in the background. Evelyn claimed the television was on. Nancy knew it was not. Then, late one Tuesday morning, Sheriff Dale Mercer called Nancy at work. He told her Evelyn had died alone in the upstairs bedroom. Heart failure, he said. No sign of forced entry. Nothing suspicious. But before ending the call, Mercer mentioned something that stayed with Nancy. He said the cellar door had been open when he arrived. Nancy almost asked him what he meant. Instead, she said she would drive down the following day. She told herself she was going back only to clean the house, meet a realtor from Charleston, and sign whatever papers were necessary. One weekend, that was all. The drive into West Virginia took nearly 5 hours. At first, the roads were familiar in an ordinary way. Interstates, truck stops, fast food signs, and long stretches of guardrail. Then the landscape tightened around her. Mountains rose on both sides. The highway became a 2-lane road. Gas stations grew farther apart. Small churches appeared beside family cemeteries. Rusted pickup trucks sat in front yards. Kudzu swallowed abandoned buildings. A faded coal tipple leaned over the valley like a burned skeleton. Near the edge of Black Hollow, Nancy passed a Dollar General with half its sign dark. 10 miles later, her cell service disappeared. The pavement ended soon after that. The last road to the farmhouse was gravel, barely wide enough for one vehicle. Tree branches scraped both sides of Nancy's SUV. Fog drifted low across the ground, gathering between the trunks. The deeper she drove, the more memories returned. Not full memories, fragments. A flashlight moving through rain. Mud on the kitchen floor. Lily crying somewhere below her. Nancy tightened both hands around the steering wheel. She told herself grief was doing this. That was what grief did. It took harmless places and filled them with ghosts. Then she reached the farmhouse. It stood at the end of the road, exactly where it had always stood. 2 stories, peeling white paint, a sagging porch, black shutters trembling against the siding even though the air was still. Behind it, the woods stretched up the mountain. They looked thicker than Nancy remembered, older, almost deliberate. For several seconds, she remained inside the SUV. The house was empty. She knew that. Her mother was dead. Lily had been gone for 22 years. There was no reason to be afraid. Then Nancy noticed the upstairs window. Someone was standing behind the glass. The figure was thin and motionless, with long dark hair hanging across its face. Nancy blinked. The window was empty. She sat there another moment, trying to steady her breathing, then forced herself outside. The silence struck her first. No birds, no insects, no distant traffic. Only the soft ticking of the SUV's cooling engine and the slow drip of water from the trees. Nancy walked toward the porch. That was when the smell reached her. Wet earth, mildew, cold ashes, and something else beneath it. Something sweet and rotten, like flowers left too long beside a grave. She unlocked the front door. The smell became stronger. Inside, the farmhouse looked almost untouched. Her mother's shoes remained beside the stairs. A grocery list sat beneath a magnet on the refrigerator. A cup of coffee had dried into a dark ring on the kitchen table. It felt less like someone had died there, and more like someone had stepped out for a moment. Nancy carried her suitcase upstairs. She passed Lily's bedroom. The door was still locked. 3 long scratches marked the wood near the handle. Nancy did not remember them being there before. She told herself they were old. She told herself the house had settled. She told herself many things that afternoon. By sunset, she almost believed them. Then, While carrying 2 trash bags toward the porch, Nancy heard a woman call her name from the woods. Softly, almost lovingly. "Nancy!" She stopped. The voice came again. This time, it sounded exactly like her dead mother. And that was the moment Nancy understood that she had not returned to Black Hollow to bury the past. The past had been waiting for her to come home. Nancy did not remember deciding to move. One second, she was standing beside the trash bags. The next, 1 foot had left the porch, and the woods were whispering her name from several directions at once. She stumbled backward and slammed the door. By morning, the woman in the gray dress was gone, but the footprints remained. Bare feet had circled the farmhouse, passing every window and every door before stopping beneath Nancy's bedroom. There were no tracks leading away. Nancy drove into Black Hollow before fear could change her mind. The town looked smaller than she remembered. A diner with 6 stools had 1 customer. A Baptist church marquee read, "The dead do not always rest." People recognized her. She could tell by the way conversations stopped. At the county library, Nancy searched microfilm records from 2003. The reports on Lily's disappearance did not match her memories. Search teams had been pulled away from the Musk property after only 3 days. Sheriff Mercer's father had cited unstable mine shafts. Then Nancy found 3 older disappearances, 3 children, 3 different families. Each vanished 22 years apart. Ruth Bell, the retired dispatcher who had taken Evelyn's emergency call, lived above a shuttered pharmacy. When Nancy mentioned Lily, Ruth's hands began trembling. "Your mother kept saying, 'Dale took the wrong one.' That isn't in the transcript." "No," Ruth said. "It was removed." She also revealed that the Musk landline called the sheriff's office every night for 11 nights after Lily disappeared. "No one spoke," Ruth whispered. "They just knocked 3 times against the receiver." Nancy asked whether Mercer knew. Ruth stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. "Go home, Ruth. Your mother wasn't scared of those woods. She was scared of that house." At a gas station near the county line, Calvin Rusk, a retired miner, offered a different story. He said the Musk family believed the forest protected Black Hollow from mine collapses. "Dead miners call from the trees," he said. "So my mother believed in that?" Calvin looked at her for a long moment. "Your family never sacrificed to the woods. They sacrificed to what lived under the floorboards." Back at the farmhouse, Nancy searched Evelyn's papers. She found utility bills showing electricity had continued running to the sealed cellar for 22 years. Grocery receipts listed children's aspirin, canned peaches, and powdered milk. Someone had been fed beneath the house. Then footsteps crossed the ceiling. Nancy was already upstairs. They stopped directly above her. Dust sifted down. A child's fingernail pushed through a crack in the plaster. Nancy screamed and ran outside. Her SUV would not start. The radio turned on by itself, cycling through bursts of static until Lily's voice emerged. "Nancy, don't let him take you downstairs." All 4 doors locked. In the rearview mirror, a tall black figure sat behind her. Its face was smooth, its arms curled around both front seats. Nancy forced the door open and fell onto the gravel. The back seat was empty, but long handprints remained on the inside of the rear window. Stories like Nancy's stay with us because they touch that private fear that grief may hide something worse than loss. And before we follow her back into that house, kindly like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from and which part of the story hit you the hardest. I believe this story found you today for a reason. Now let's get back to the story. Behind Evelyn's dresser, Nancy found a locked steel box. Inside were Polaroids of musk women standing beside the woods. In every photograph, a tall figure watched from the trees. A journal explained that Silas Musk built the farmhouse over an abandoned mine in 1891. Something beneath Black Hollow could imitate the dead. Every 22 years, the family gave it a child. Nancy turned to the final page. Lily was never meant to be chosen. Nancy was. Below it,
I gave it the wrong daughter. It has never forgiven me.
a floorboard creaked behind her. Sheriff Mercer stood in the doorway holding a revolver. You were supposed to find that after we finished. He closed the door. Your mother didn't die of heart failure. Mercer kept the revolver pointed at Nancy. Your mother killed herself, he said. She chose that over finishing what she started. Nancy stared at him. You're lying. My family has protected this hollow for generations. My grandfather worked the original mine. My father ran the search for Lily. I was there that night. Mercer's voice remained calm, almost rehearsed. The tunnels were never properly sealed. Something lives beneath them. Whenever the agreement is broken, the ground shifts. Houses crack, roads sink, graves open. You murdered my sister. Your mother took her to the cellar, Mercer said. I only made sure she didn't change her mind. He raised the gun. Downstairs, Nancy moved into the hallway. Mercer followed close behind. You don't protect this town, she said. You protect yourself. His expression tightened. The Mercer family owned most of the land above the old mine system. If the tunnels collapsed, their property would be worthless. Worse, the earth might uncover what generations of Mercers had buried. You think people want the truth? He asked. They want electricity, roads, houses that don't disappear into the ground. Then he told her Evelyn had delayed the ritual for 22 years by keeping someone alive below the house. Nancy thought of the powdered milk, the canned peaches, the children's aspirin. They had not been offerings. Someone had been eating them. Memory struck her without warning. Thunder against the windows. Her mother carrying a lantern. Lily crying on the cellar stairs. A younger Mercer gripping Nancy's shoulders. Evelyn screaming. She isn't the one you promised! Nancy remembered Mercer hitting her mother. She remembered Lily being dragged toward a hole in the brick wall. Then came the memory that made her knees weaken. Hours later, Lily had still been screaming beneath the kitchen floor. The search teams never entered the house. Mercer's father had declared it unsafe. The hallway lights flickered. Something scraped its nails inside the walls. A child laughed from Lily's empty bedroom. Mercer spun and fired. For one bright second, the muzzle flash revealed children crouched across the ceiling. Their mouths were packed with dirt. Their eye sockets were hollow. Darkness returned. Then the lights came back. Mercer was gone. His revolver lay on the floor inside a ring of wet leaves. Nancy, his voice called from behind the cellar door. Help me. At the kitchen window, another Mercer whispered, Don't go down there. Nancy opened the cellar. The stone steps seemed deeper than before. Black moisture ran down the walls. At the bottom, dozens of names had been carved into the foundation. All children, all 22 years apart. The last two read, Lily Musk, 2003, Nancy Musk, 2025. Lily's pink sneaker hung beside her name. Its sole was wet. 3 scratches came from behind the bricks. Then a woman whispered, Nancy? Older now, weak, but still Lily. Nancy found letters hidden between loose stones. Evelyn had written them over 2 decades. Lily survived the tunnel. Evelyn fed her through a ventilation shaft while searching for a way to break the agreement. The cellar had been sealed to protect Nancy. The voices in the woods were warnings. The dead children and minors could not enter the house, but they could call people away from it. The house was the mouth. The cellar was the throat. Nancy pulled out one loose brick. Cold breath touched her face. An eye opened in the darkness. It looked like Lily's. Then another opened above it. Then dozens more. A chorus of children whispered, "Lily kept us hungry." The wall began to bulge. A hand burst through the mortar. Sheriff Mercer's wedding ring gleamed on one finger. Then Nancy heard her own voice from inside the tunnel. "Let me out." The brick wall ruptured. Cold air exploded through the cellar, carrying coal dust, rotten roots, and the smell of standing water. Figures crawled from the tunnel, children in decayed clothes, miners with crushed helmets and flattened faces, tall, smooth-skinned shapes whose arms bent backward at the elbows. Their mouths opened. Nancy heard her mother, her co-workers, a childhood teacher, every voice she had ever trusted. The house groaned around her. Pipes screamed. Doors slammed. Floorboards rose and fell like ribs. Black hands pressed through the wallpaper as Nancy ran upstairs. Mercer stepped into the hallway. At first, he looked unharmed. Then his face shifted. One eye moved before the other. His jaw slid sideways. His smile stretched beyond the corners of his mouth. Something was wearing him. "Every child gave us a voice," it said. "Lily survived. The debt did not. I'm not going with you. You already came home." Mercer's mouth opened wider. Evelyn's voice came out. "Sweetheart, come home." Nancy saw her mother standing in the bedroom doorway. Evelyn looked younger, exhausted, bruised. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have told you. I should have saved both of you." Nancy nearly stepped toward her. Then Evelyn smiled. The smile widened until her cheeks split. Nancy stopped. "My mother never called that house home." The apparition's face collapsed inward. The walls began screaming. Nancy reached the porch. Figures stood beneath every tree, black and elongated in the blue-gray fog. Their fingers spread through the branches like dead twigs. One stepped forward, a pale woman in a torn gray dress. Wet hair clung to her gaunt face. One pink sneaker covered her left foot.
"Lily?"
The woman nodded.
"Mom kept me alive through the shaft,"
She said.
"I stayed quiet whenever it used your voice."
She grabbed Nancy's wrist.
"It can't make a new voice. It can only steal one."
The truth struck Nancy. The calls had not been from Lily. Lily pulled her toward the woods. The sacrifices were never the ritual, she said. Silas lied. It needs someone to answer a dead relative willingly. The children were bait. Behind them, the farmhouse doorway filled with darkness. Evelyn called, "Nancy!" Nancy closed her eyes. The whole hollow repeated her name. She did not answer. Nancy and Lily ran. The trees bent aside through the fog. Long-limbed figures followed from both directions. Roots twisted through the soil like fingers. The ground rose beneath their feet. Behind them, the farmhouse ignited. Faces crowded every burning window. Lily fell. Nancy grabbed her hand. For 1 second, Lily's fingers were warm. Then she whispered in Evelyn's voice, "You finally answered." Nancy released her. The woman's face split into a wide black mouth. Nancy ran alone, while the woods erupted with her own scream. At sunrise, state police found her beside Route 16, covered in mud and blood. The farmhouse had burned to its foundation. No bodies were found. Only one set of footprints left the property. 3 weeks later, Nancy returned to Ohio. She changed apartments, disconnected every device, and refused to sleep near windows. Some stories do not end when someone escapes. They follow them home and wait until ordinary life feels safe again. At exactly 2:13 a.m., Nancy's phone rang. The caller ID read, Lily Musk. Nancy answered, but said nothing. Breathing filled the line. Then Nancy's own voice whispered, Lily made it out. A pause. But Nancy is still in the woods. 3 knocks sounded inside her closet. From beneath the bed, a little girl asked, Then who came home? Nancy looked at the window. Her reflection was smiling. She was not. Outside, hundreds of miles from Black Hollow, the trees began calling Nancy Musk by the name of her dead sister.